I'm a geography teacher, and this was the dumbest student I've ever met. You know how every teacher has that one student who sticks in your memory forever? Not because they were brilliant, or kind, or life-changing, but because they made you question the very foundation of human logic. Yeah. For me, that student was Kyle. I've been a geography teacher for over 10 years. I've survived textbook shortages, fire drills in the rain, and one unforgettable semester where half my class thought Mount Rushmore was in Canada. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for Kyle. He joined my sophomore geography class in September. Bright eyes, messy hair, backpack hanging open like his brain probably was. He looked like a human golden retriever, full of enthusiasm, but absolutely no idea what was going on. On day 1, I thought, oh, he's sweet, probably just nervous. By day 2, I realized, no, he was not nervous. He was Kyle. Our first topic was world maps, a simple, easy warm-up to the year, or at least it should have been. I asked the class, who can point to South America? Dozens of hands went up, but of course, Kyle practically launched himself out of his chair like he was buzzing in on a game show. I nodded at him. He marched confidently to the giant wall map, everyone watching in silence. He hesitated for half a second, then slammed his finger down on Australia. Silence. 28 pairs of eyes looked from the map, to me, to Kyle. He looked proud, like he'd just solved world hunger. I blinked. Kyle, I said gently, that's Australia. He nodded, serious as ever, and said, right. But it's south. And it's in America, right? I swear, I could feel my brain cells staging a protest. That moment set the tone for the entire year. Every class after that was a gamble, a roulette wheel of confusion, chaos, and accidental comedy. During a lesson about continents, he asked if the North Pole was where Santa lived, or if it was just where he parks his sleigh. When we studied deserts, he raised his hand and said, so, what's the Wi-Fi situation out there? And during climate zones, he once asked if humid was a new country. At first, I thought he was joking. But no, Kyle was painfully sincere. Still, he wasn't rude or disruptive. In fact, he was one of the kindest kids I'd ever met. He stayed after class to help me put away globes, even though he once dropped one and shouted, oh no, I broke the world. He meant it. He genuinely panicked. So I tried to be patient, to guide him, to believe that, deep down, there was a spark of geographical understanding waiting to be lit. Spoiler alert, there was not. By October, I had stopped underestimating his ability to surprise me, and by surprise, I mean completely derail my sanity. One test question asked, name a country located on the continent of Africa. Kyle wrote, Egypt, I think, but maybe the Old Testament. They both have pyramids. I reread it 5 times. I even checked the other side of the paper, thinking maybe it was a joke. Nope. Just Kyle logic. But the real highlight came during our capital cities unit. That's when Kyle gave the class, and me, one of the most memorable moments in my career. We were reviewing easy examples: Paris, France, London, United Kingdom, Tokyo, Japan. Then I asked, what's the capital of Canada? Without hesitation, Kyle's hand shot up. He looked thrilled, like he'd been waiting all semester for this question. I smiled, thinking maybe, just maybe, he'd finally gotten one right. He said proudly, see? See? I stared at him, waiting for the punchline that never came. He said, capital means the first letter, right? I swear, I could feel my soul leaving my body. The class exploded in laughter, and poor Kyle just sat there, completely confused about why everyone found his answer so funny. I managed to calm everyone down, but internally, I was reevaluating my career choices. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, stared at a globe, and whispered, why, Canada? Why did you have to start with C? But Kyle's crowning achievement, the moment that cemented his legacy, came during our annual geography fair. Each student had to choose a country, research it, and make a poster presentation. Simple, straightforward, in theory. Kyle picked Greenland. I thought, perfect. There's no way he can mess that up. Oh, how wrong I was. He arrived that morning with a massive bright green poster board, because, of course, Greenland. Across the top, in huge bubble letters outlined with glitter, it said, Greenland, capital, Iceland. I felt my stomach drop, not only because it was wrong, but because I could already see the confusion spreading through the classroom like wildfire. I asked if he was sure. He nodded proudly and said he Googled it. Turns out he Googled capital of Iceland and assumed the relationship worked both ways. During the fair, parents came by to see the projects. Kyle stood there, grinning ear to ear, talking about how green Greenland used to be before they ran out of paint. One mom asked him what made Greenland special, and he replied with total confidence, it's the only country named after a color that's lying to you. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. By the end of the semester, Kyle had become something of a legend, a walking meme of my classroom. Other teachers would stop by just to witness whatever new sentence he'd managed to surprise us with. He once raised his hand during a lesson on natural disasters and asked if earthquakes happen because the earth sneezes. When I asked him to explain plate tectonics, he said, oh, like tectonic plates. Those are the ones they use at fancy restaurants, right? I wanted to scream. Or laugh. Or maybe both. But somewhere between the laughter and the mild existential crisis, I realized something. Kyle was happy. He didn't care about being wrong. He wasn't embarrassed. He just loved learning, even if he understood absolutely none of it. And in a weird way, that made me admire him. He reminded me that sometimes it's okay not to know everything, as long as you keep asking questions, even the ridiculous ones. Because at least he cared. He was trying. And that, in the grand scheme of education, is worth something. But, oh, my story with Kyle was far from over. Because that spring came the field trip. Spring arrived, the time of year when teachers start counting down the days until summer, and students start mentally checking out of class. But before that sweet release of vacation, we had one more big event on the calendar, the annual geography field trip. Every year, our department takes the sophomore class to the local nature reserve, a beautiful stretch of forest and wetlands designed to help students connect with geography in the real world. Usually, it's peaceful, educational, a day of sunshine, fresh air, and the occasional student falling into the mud for comedic effect. This year, though, I made one crucial mistake. I let Kyle come. Not that I could stop him, of course, but deep down, I knew. Something chaotic was going to happen. We boarded the bus at 8 a.m. sharp. 30 teenagers, one tired bus driver, and me, clutching my clipboard like it was a shield against insanity. Kyle arrived late, running down the parking lot with his backpack half-zipped, waving a paper bag that I later learned contained 2 Pop-Tarts, a compass, and sunscreen labeled SPF 5. He climbed aboard, out of breath but beaming. "Ready to explore the continents," he said. We were not leaving the state. I didn't have the heart to correct him yet. The ride took about an hour. I tried to review safety rules and learning objectives, but the back of the bus was chaos. Someone was playing music off their phone. 2 kids were arguing about who invented clouds, and Kyle was staring out the window like he expected to see the Eiffel Tower any second. When we finally arrived, I gave my usual speech. Stay with your group, don't wander off, don't touch wildlife, and for the love of all things holy, don't eat anything you find on the ground. Kyle nodded solemnly, as if I'd just sworn him into office. The first part of the trip went okay. We walked along a nature trail, stopping at informational signs. I pointed out how erosion shaped the landscape. Kyle whispered to a friend, "Erosion? That's like when your phone battery dies slowly, right?" I pretended not to hear. Things started to go downhill, literally, about 20 minutes later. I was explaining how rivers carve valleys over time when I noticed Kyle at the edge of the path, crouched by a puddle. I asked what he was doing. He looked up, grinning, and said, "I'm checking the current." He was stirring the puddle with a stick. I closed my eyes, counted to 5, and reminded myself that patience is a virtue. We moved on to the observation tower, a wooden platform overlooking the wetlands. Beautiful view, educational moment. Until Kyle, standing proudly at the top, announced to the group, "Wow, you can really see how flat the earth is from up here." I heard actual gasps. I turned to look at him, half expecting a smirk. No smirk. Just Kyle, squinting at the horizon like he'd just made a scientific discovery. I said, "Kyle, the earth isn't flat." He frowned. "Yeah, but from here it kind of is, right?" Several kids started laughing. One girl filmed it for TikTok. I prayed silently for the ground to open up and swallow me whole. By lunchtime, my nerves were hanging by a thread. We gathered at the picnic area, and I told everyone to eat, hydrate, and please, just stay put. Kyle sat on a log, unwrapping his Pop-Tarts, and asked me, "So, is this part of North America or Central?" I said, "Kyle, we're in Ohio." He nodded thoughtfully. "So, Northern Central America?" I didn't even have the strength to answer, but the real disaster struck that afternoon. The last stop on our trip was the Geological Exploration Trail, a fancy name for a rocky path where students could examine different layers of soil and rock formations. I divided everyone into groups, handed out worksheets, and told them to collect samples. Carefully. 10 minutes in, I noticed Kyle wandering off alone. I called out, "Kyle, stay with your group!" He shouted back, "Don't worry, I'm mapping." Mapping. That word sent a chill down my spine. I jogged over, and what did I find? Kyle, kneeling in the dirt, drawing circles in the ground with a stick. He'd made what looked like a crop circle designed by someone who'd failed basic geometry. I asked what he was doing. He said, "Making a map of our location, north, south, east, and west." I blinked. "I'm sorry, west?" He pointed confidently to the left. "You know, like west, but sideways." That was the moment I gave up on logic. Then, as if the universe wanted to test my limits, the sky started to darken. Storm clouds rolled in, thunder rumbling in the distance. I told everyone to pack up. We needed to head back to the bus. Most of the kids followed immediately. But Kyle? Kyle was missing. I scanned the area. No Kyle. Just wind, rain starting to fall, and 30 anxious teenagers waiting for instructions. My stomach sank. I split the group in half, told one chaperone to take everyone to the bus, and ran back down the trail with my umbrella and absolutely zero hope. I found him 15 minutes later, standing at the base of a hill, holding a rock above his head like it was the Holy Grail. He looked ecstatic. "I found a fossil!" he yelled. It was a piece of concrete. I told him to put it down. He said, "But look, there's writing on it. This could be ancient." It said, "No parking." The rain was pouring by then, mud everywhere. Kyle slipped twice on the way back, each time shouting, "Geographical hazard!" like it was part of his research. By the time we made it to the bus, we were soaked, exhausted, and covered in enough mud to start our own swamp documentary. The other students were silent, half from fear, half from disbelief. Kyle, though, was thrilled. He plopped into his seat and said, "That was awesome! We saw rivers, mountains, fossils, and maybe even an extinct parking zone." I stared out the bus window, raindrops sliding down the glass, wondering if it was too late to change careers. When we returned to school, the principal asked how the trip went. I just said, educational, and walked away before I could start laughing hysterically. But here's the thing. Despite everything, the confusion, the chaos, the near death by puddle, Kyle's field trip report was oddly beautiful. He turned it in a week later, handwritten in shaky pencil, with doodles in the margins. The title, What I Learned About the World. He wrote about how nature made him feel small, but in a good way. About how the ground tells stories if you listen to it long enough. About how getting lost helped him realize that finding your way is the fun part. And I'll admit, I cried a little. Sure, his report claimed that Ohio is 85% swamp, and that erosion is when dirt gets tired. But underneath all that, there was something pure. He got the spirit of exploration. He just missed every single fact. That was Kyle in a nutshell. A kid who turned every mistake into a moment of wonder. A reminder that maybe education isn't about being right, it's about being curious enough to try. Still, I prayed he wouldn't sign up for advanced geography next year. But of course, he did. The following school year began like every other. New faces, fresh notebooks, that familiar smell of coffee and anxiety in the teacher's lounge. But I couldn't shake one question from my mind. Would Kyle come back? Of course he did. Because life loves irony. I saw his name on my roster for advanced geography. I stared at the paper for a good minute, sipping my coffee like it might suddenly turn into wine. There it was. Kyle Thompson, period 3. When the semester started, he walked into my classroom like a returning hero. Same bright smile, same overstuffed backpack, same energy that could power a small city. He waved and said, "Don't worry, Miss H. I studied this summer. I'm practically an expert now." My soul left my body for a moment. Still, I decided to stay optimistic. Maybe he'd improved. Maybe he'd finally figured out where South America was. Hope is a dangerous thing for teachers, but it's all we've got. The first unit was on climate zones. I explained everything, tropical, temperate, polar. Easy enough. Then I asked the class, "Who can tell me where you might find a desert climate?" Kyle's hand shot up like a rocket. "On the beach," he said proudly. The class laughed. I didn't. I just said, "Not quite, Kyle, but we'll get there." By mid-semester, it was clear he hadn't changed much, only upgraded his confusion. He was still the same Kyle, but now with confidence. Dangerous combination. Once, during a group project on global warming, his group was supposed to make a chart showing rising ocean temperatures. Kyle drew a thermometer in the middle of the Pacific and labeled it Earth Fever. He stood up to present it and said, "So basically the planet's like, overheating. We should probably give it some ice or something." I laughed so hard I nearly fell off my chair. He wasn't joking. Then came his essay titled The Geography of Happiness. I thought finally, something philosophical. It began beautifully. Happiness is like a mountain. You climb, you slip, but the view keeps you going. Then paragraph 2. Mount Everest is in Africa. I almost screamed, but by then I'd stopped trying to fix everything. Instead, I just started appreciating it. Every class with Kyle was unpredictable, sure, but also kind of magical. He saw the world through this lens of pure wonder, like facts were suggestions, and discovery was a hobby. And sometimes, in the middle of grading papers or explaining tectonic plates for the 100th time, I'd catch myself smiling. Because while other students memorized facts for the test, Kyle felt geography. He didn't understand it, but he felt it. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth something. Still, the year wasn't without its disasters. In March, I organized another class project, the Global Village Fair. Each student was assigned a country to research and represent with a display table. Food, culture, geography, the works. Kyle, naturally, chose New Zealand. Easy enough, right? Wrong. The day of the fair, he arrived carrying a giant poster that said, "New Zealand, home of the New Zealots." I asked him what he meant. He said, like, they're really into being Zealanders. He wasn't being ironic. His table had 3 items, a stuffed kangaroo, a jar of honey, and a cardboard sign that read, "Middle Earth is real." He'd confused New Zealand with both Australia and a fictional realm. Parents were walking by, trying not to laugh. One dad asked, "So what's your favorite part of New Zealand, Kyle?" Kyle said, "Definitely the koalas." I pretended to cough to hide my laughter, but here's where it got strangely wholesome. Halfway through the fair, Kyle noticed another student's display, a beautifully crafted model of the Great Barrier Reef. He walked over, complimented her, and said, "Wow, that's amazing. I totally thought reefs were like in the sky or something." The girl laughed, and they started talking, genuinely connecting over maps and travel dreams. By the end of the day, Kyle had made more friends than anyone else, because that's who he was. Endlessly curious, endlessly kind, and totally unbothered by being wrong. As the year drew to a close, it hit me. This was my last class with Kyle. He'd be graduating soon, and despite everything, or maybe because of everything, I was going to miss him. Final exam day came. Everyone sat silently, scribbling answers. I handed out the tests, walked around, and tried not to make eye contact with Kyle. I didn't want to see what chaos he might be writing. When he turned in his paper, he smiled proudly and said, "I think I nailed it this time." My heart dropped a little. I'd heard that before. After class, I sat down with a cup of tea and started grading. Most tests were fine. Then I reached his. Question 1. What is the equator? Kyle wrote, the Earth's waistband. Question 3. Name a country that borders France. Answer, Europe. Question 5. Explain the concept of tectonic plates. Answer, the Earth's bones click together sometimes. I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. But then I read the essay question. How has studying geography changed your perspective on the world? And that's when I stopped grading. He wrote, before this class, I thought the world was just lines and names on a map. But now I know it's bigger, messier, and way more interesting. I still don't get half of it, but I want to see it all. Even if I get lost, that's okay. Because if you don't get lost, how do you find anything worth finding? I sat there for a while, smiling. Because somehow, in his own weird, wonderful way, he got it. He really did. A week later, graduation day arrived. The gym was packed. Proud parents, crying teachers, kids in shiny gowns tripping over their own shoes. I was helping line up the students when Kyle walked by, cap slightly crooked, tassel tangled in his hair. He gave me a thumbs up and said, thanks for teaching me all those planets. I laughed. Of course he said that. When they called his name, he walked across the stage, waving like a celebrity. He shook the principal's hand, got his diploma, and, I kid you not, held it up to the audience and yelled, finally graduated from geometry. The crowd erupted in laughter. I think I aged another year right there. After the ceremony, he came over to me, still grinning. He said, hey, Miss H. I'm thinking about traveling after college. Any place you recommend I don't get lost in? I told him, anywhere with maps, Kyle. He nodded seriously, like I'd given him ancient wisdom. Then he hugged me. It was awkward, warm, and somehow perfect. That night, as I sat at home, sipping tea, and staring at the stack of leftover lesson plans, I realized something. Kyle had taught me more than any class ever could. He reminded me that learning isn't about perfection. It's about curiosity, mistakes, laughter, and trying again anyway. That geography isn't just about where we are. It's about how we see. And honestly, if every teacher gets one student, they'll remember forever. I'm glad mine was him. Because the truth is, I'll never forget the kid who thought the capital of Canada was C, who mapped puddles, and who believed the Earth might just be a little flat on top. He made me laugh when I wanted to cry. He made me patient when I wanted to scream. And he made teaching feel like an adventure again. So, to every Kyle out there, thanks for reminding us why we do this. And to everyone watching, thanks for sticking around till the end of this story. If it made you smile, laugh, or remember your own version of Kyle, hit that subscribe button because there are plenty more stories where this one came from. See you in the next one.